Okay, welcome to this Research in Practice event held on the 5th of October 2022. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining from the traditional lands of the Bunurong people. I extend respect to elders past, present and emerging as the custodians and knowledge holders for this place. I acknowledge the custodianship for land, seas, skies, waterways, and all systems that embody country, reciprocally nurtured by local peoples here for millennia. I'm Jacqueline Baker, your host, and today's speaker is researcher Dr. Nataly Arevalo, who is joining us from Melbourne. Nataly was born and educated in Quito in Ecuador in South America. Her life story is really fascinating. She was born to a mother who is a psychologist and a father who is an architect, and you can see why her PhD research is at the intersection of both professions. So from the age of 4, Nataly participated as a semi-professional competitor for her country in swimming, triathlons, and the half Ironman. She attended a military high school before commencing her studies in architecture. During her 4th year of study, she went on exchange to Oregon University, and part of her master's was completed in Shanghai in China. Nataly then moved to Melbourne around 5 years ago to take up a PhD program of study at Swinburne University. This presentation focuses on Nataly's PhD research on the experience of fear of crime on campus settings. The research uses the well-known crime prevention through environmental design framework, CPTED, as well as theory rooted in sociology, criminology, environmental psychology, and environmental design. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and if you have any questions, there'll be an opportunity afterward to ask them. So over to you, Nataly.
Hello, thank you very much. That's an amazing presentation. Let me just share my my screen with you here. Can you see it?
Yep.
All right. All right. Thank you for joining me today. I'll be walking through my research that studied experiences of fear of crime on university settings. Just a quick disclaimer, this is only the first part of my presentation because of time. So in the second part of my presentation, I elaborated, I used the findings I discovered to create a framework. So yeah, hopefully I'll be back to present that part. But for today, I'll let you know about, yes, that's my interest about understanding the connection between individuals and environments. That's when I get to CPTED. CPTED is a framework, a theoretical and practical framework that intends to use design to prevent crime and reduce fear of crime. Because of my background, I'm focusing particularly on how they assess and they understand fear of crime. For starters, fear of crime is a construct with 3 parts responding to the environmental components or features that symbolize crime. It contains 3 parts: the affective, or better known as perceptions of risk or safety, cognitive, which involves more complex psychological functions. So it's about the worries that specific crimes can have on us. Sorry, is someone, maybe Emma's microphone is it's on? Okay, that's better, thank you. And then we have the behaviors, how those two phases of our psychology are reflected into how we act. For instance, it could be just changing, decided to change our paths to go back home at nighttime because we feel fear that something will happen to us. So we have these three phases, and it's important to recognize that perceptions or safety is not the same as fear of crime. Fear of crime is a bit more complex. It contains more phases, psychological phases, as you can see here. All right. So CPTED, what CPTED tell us with their theory is that, first of all, it's multidisciplinary. It comes from, started with criminology, sociology, and situational crime prevention. The boundaries between them is quite blurry. They all intersect with each other, but in my case, because I have a background in design, I was interested to know more about the environmental design. So how those environments are understood and they are assessed in terms of fear of crime. The two main theories that are that make up the environmental design are defensible space of Newman and Eyes on the Street of Jane Jacobs. I think we are all familiar with that. So how those theories, theoretical perspective are translated into CPTED is through their three models. And those three models involve the understanding of the physical space through different principles, as you can see here, but I won't go deeper on that. The second generation of CPTED addresses the people, society around us and how they can be utilized to enhance our safety. And then we have the third one recently developed or proposed. It's more holistic and involves elements from livability and start to reach out to elements of belonging and self-knowledge, for instance. But I found that CPTED in practice, it can be quite challenging because of different aspects. The first one is about the preconceptions that exist in some of the public spaces, particularly campuses. We have that, and unfortunately, over the last years, we have had different types of incidents occurring on campuses and surrounding areas. So I think these preconceptions are changing, but there still needs to be more work done. The inaccessibility to data, some campuses might be secretive because they want to keep their reputation, for sure. And then the inconsistency of some of the policies as well for safety. And the most important and relevant for my research is the way of understanding the environments, especially the exterior environments of the campuses. So this is an example of an incident report obtained by Freedom of Information. And it was quite challenging to get there in first place. And then also the environmental information you have here is quite general. You can have just campus, levels of incidents or type of building. So it's quite vague and difficult to understand further what's going on in those environments. So I thought this could be a good approach to start asking myself, what are the environmental components involved in the students' fear of crime experiences? To do so, I propose a methodology of 3 steps. The first step, I generated a theoretical approach using transactional theory from environmental psychology to fill up the existing gaps of environmental design. I also studied which campus could be a good example for a study case. In this case, I chose a campus that is in an urbanized area of Melbourne, that it connects quite well with different land uses that are problematic for safety, such as transportation nodes, commercial areas, entertainment areas, residential areas, green spaces. And the second step, I was inspired to design my methodology based on Morse, the author that proposed this type of methods designs. She suggests to give a clear theoretical driver to a mixed method research. So my research applies 3 methods, but is qualitative driven. So I apply the online survey to gather this is based in current research, and to gather the fear indexes, as I call it, and demographic information, mobile diary to map out the fear of crime experiences on site, and to let the students move around their campuses and introduce all this data. And then the group interviews to expand on those experiences collected on site. The third step, it was the triangulation of these methods into the narrative synthesis, where I use two specific visualization methods to enable this understanding, which was quite complex, and of course in vivo tools such as framework matrices. This is one of the node and link diagram. You can see here is quite complex, but it started to show me different aspects from our environments that were involved in the perceptions of fear of crime. And the most important one, I believe, is and is quite connected and often reoccurring, is the dimension of time. And then we have the social aspects of our environment, the physical environments, and as well as the space. This is a summary and simplified version of the previous diagram. So what the findings tell us? Yes, first of all, it confirmed the approach of CPTED, that yes, architecture or the physical world is involved in our perceptions. People are also, this is the kind of the inverse looking at not people, not like Jen Jacobs or Yangel, that look at people as a medium of safety, but on the inverse way, looking at people as source of fear of crime. And then a space, highlighting the role that has a space in the way we inhabit our campuses. So in that way, I use the theories of Hiller, that he mentions the spaces and machines. So he brings back again the importance that this container of the elements is alive, right? So so this abstract framework generates fear of crime. And particularly, two dimensions were found as relevant for the students to generate fears. We have the measurement of enclosure, given that the nature of our buildings and spaces are generate these voids, and within these voids we can feel compressed, we can feel trapped. That's what the students were feeling. And also the dimensions, the scale of buildings, and the feelings of being very small, being trapped, not knowing where to go, feelings of loss. Permeability, it was another special dimension that connected not only with aspects of how we see our environments, but also how we hear our environments. So it was connected with the noises that were transmitted by the trains, and how those sounds were making the students feel vulnerable and in constant alert. Then we have the theme of architecture, using the ideas of Kant, who studied the connection that we have with our physical world. We see that this physical realm is present, is there, and in this case, the walls and fences were identified as the main sources of fear. But just saying walls and fences is too general. So that was my intention, exactly, to get to the bottom of this specific reason of fear, and that was materiality. The materiality of walls and fences were creating these feelings of uneasy for some students because they were connected with past memories. In the case of this student, he used to feel train lines, bridges, for instance. It was always a reoccurring moment of uneasiness, and looking the same features and characteristics in their campuses. It was bringing back these memories. Then we have deterioration, and I think I chose this example because it's super clear to see here the connection with time into the theme of architecture. In this case, we have this grass, but we have that the same student in this specific site over the springtime, he had an amazing time, so good memories about it. But during winter time, because of the lack of maintenance, we have an overgrown grass. So this means that of course, visibility is not that good at this point over winter time. So that's the intervention of time and how the same space can have different meanings for the students. And finally, we have the topic of people, which I think that was the most complex to make sense out of it, because it people are complicated. We are complicated. We have different behaviors, different movements. There are different characteristics of our social activities. So I follow the idea of Gail, who has this what, where, how long, how fast, who, and how many framework. But as I mentioned earlier, seeing from the perspective of that all of these characteristics cause fear, not that all these characteristics are for reactivating an space. So I found that location type and behaviors of social activities were the generators of fear. The type of activity here, I call it displaced voluntary activity. It occurs when some activities occur, but they are not really done for that. For instance, on this space, this student decides to just wait and keep chatting on his phone. But from the perception of the observer, this student shouldn't be doing this. So it creates bad feelings on her. That potentially this person is waiting for her to be attacked. And on the other hand, some other activities as well occurs when the people just decide to stand up and in other places in the middle of the road where they are not done for that. So is that not correspondence of the activity with the space that is designed for. And then we have, as I call it, the displaced compulsory activity. Compulsory because we have the policy of non-smoking on campuses, inside the campuses. But this sort of activities, so this policy, what it does is send the students outside the boundary of the campus. But then it generates this question: where the campus starts and where it ends, which is quite difficult to do with the typology of campuses we have in Australia, because they are quite open. They don't have a specific gates to show where the campus starts and where it finishes, especially if it's embedded into the urban fabric. So from the perspective of the students, some people were smoking inside the campus, which was not allowed, and they didn't like it, and they associated those traces of cigarettes or people smoking, the smell of the smoke, with disorder and with a potential area of crime as well. And then we have the behaviors, particular behaviors. So we have the static activities. For the observer, anyway, it's also connected with smoking. These type of behaviors, when people are just sitting and potentially waiting for jumping on you if you are just a passerby. So these sort of activities, when they seem that some people is just waiting there, they are not doing anything else, just potentially picking the next victim. And then we have the non-static activities. This was quite interesting because this was associated with loitering. So loitering is when people just walk back and forth with no purpose. And so this activity of waiting it becomes a source of fear for the students. And it looks creepy, they mentioned. And then we have the second set of the characteristics of the social activities, which is time, diversity, and size. Time, as I mentioned, yes, it was quite clear that during nighttime, because the campus will be isolated, less people around, it becomes more fearful. But it was interesting to see also some contradictions, because for some other students, it was the campus at nighttime. It was safe when there were some nightclubs on. Nightclubs is a space that is connected with crimes that are quite difficult, such as rape and other sort of horrifying types of incidents. But anyway, for some students, it was interesting to see that for them it was a safe space. And the other type of the activity was the diversity on campuses. For instance, for some people qualified that some people look odd, or some people look different from them. Some people mention about there were some homeless people around as well. So the familiarity that the students have with those around make them feel fearful. And also the demographics, this is also together with the first one, the demographics as long of those passersby, if they could relate to those people around them, they will feel safer. The size of the social activity as well, if we have the two poles, if they see only one people, it would be unsafe for them, because again, it's like someone is just waiting for you there to be attacked. And we have the opposite, which is if you have too many people around them, you could have fears of being pickpocketed. So generally, this was nearby the restaurants, the cafes, and the transportation nodes. So this takes me to my conclusion, and I think my research contributed in two aspects. The first one, it extracted the meanings of the fear of crime experience for the students, but it also provides an environmental way to start understanding and potentially organizing how we understand the environment. And actually, that's that's the extended framework I am not showing you today. Okay, so the first summary we can say is that environmental components of fear of crime that generate fear of crime are the space, the architecture, people, which are traversed by time, which all contain the time dimension. And then I found environmental component types. So we can say that the there were found, it was found a microstructure and a microstructure. The microstructure involves the large scale properties, such as the street segments, walls and fences, and social activity. And the microstructure involves actually the qualities of those elements. So in the case of a space, we have enclosure and permeability. We have, for the architecture, we have materiality and deterioration. And for the social activity, we have location, type, behavior, time, diversity, and size. I think this is important to highlight the difference between the approach that CPTED has, because in CPTED, I think they reach up to this scale, and it's quite general. For instance, they would say, we identify walls and fences as a source of fear, therefore they need to be fixed. So what's the fix? Generating a nice mural, for instance. But they don't identify clearly what is really those qualities of the environment. So that's what my research does, is it provides this organizing framework that could be repeated for assessing different types of environments. So my research doesn't provide and says that, okay, enclosure and permeability, they will always be causing fear. That's not what it does. What it does is providing the framework of understanding that space, their large properties and qualities are involved in fear of crime. Therefore, we should conduct assessments like this one in different types of spaces to identify what are the large scale properties and small scale properties to identify in those specific spaces the generators of fear of crime. And finally, yes, this goes together with the previous one. This is the scale. So in other words, a micro scale extracts the precise design related components from the vast universe of space, architecture, and social realms, as I call them, because there are so many. So the challenge is identifying which ones are the ones that intervene in some particular spaces and for some particular types of groups of people. It could be only for women, it could be only for men, it could be only for people with the special capacities. And then from them, we have the qualities of those spaces. And I think that should be it. And yeah, I have the final slide. It was Albert Einstein motivation phrase. It kept me going because at some points I felt like I don't know what I'm doing. I think that's quite common. It was very difficult to achieve this conclusion. So yeah, I'm just sharing. In the middle of difficulty lies an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Nataly. Are there any questions for Nataly?
I've got a question, or it might be more of a comment, actually. Nataly, thank you for sharing that. That was really interesting. I wonder, given all the contradictions in the findings that you found, whether it all boils down in some way to the other, so a fear of the other. The students are scared of people if they're not doing the same thing that they're doing. So if the students are sitting down, they're worried about the people who are walking past. If they're walking past, they're worried about the people who are sitting down loitering. If they're smoking, they're worried about getting jumped. If they're not smoking, they're annoyed and a bit worried about the smokers. Is there an element of, I don't know, with a group of students, is it an element of growing up and embracing the other rather than being scared of them?
When it comes to the social theme, you mean people theme, right?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Let me go back to remember. Okay, so that I will have the time. Okay, I can, yeah, I think it's this one was reoccurring often, and I did not, in my group, study group, I did not find that many differences, I would say. They were almost all saying the same thing. This displays a voluntary activity. I use the term displays coming from crime. Displaced crime occurs when in a specific space occurs a crime, but then because there are some strategies going on there, this crime activity, it's moves somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm using. So I would say this voluntarily type of activity, like when some people are walking or sitting, standing in spaces, in some spaces, for the perspective of the students would be to say, oh, that's not the right space for doing so. And generally that occur in some kind of spaces with potential for hiding.
Yep.
Like this one you see in the photo here. Because it looks a little strange, right? It doesn't, the space is not for doing that. So that's the role of us designers, to really create simple spaces, clear for the citizens to what activity should be done there. So it reduces the possibilities for encountering this sort of situations. So I would say that one, and yeah, that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that's also that's the reality, and that's why I think that's how people are. We are so diverse. We think in so many different ways. So I think that was the intention of my research, to make clear that it's difficult to reduce to just a questionnaire for evaluating fear of crime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we need to listen to people, we need to talk with them, we need to go to site and collect those experiences and understand our spaces.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the critiques of my research, and that's why I decided to go through the qualitative aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. Any other questions or comments? I might just talk a little bit. I was lucky enough to have a coffee with Nataly about a month ago, I think it was, and I was quite fascinated by her life story. So it's a little bit separate from this research. And I've got a question. I was quite inspired by how you've managed to do your PhD in 5 years, as well as having 2 babies in that time. And I was just wondering, did your background being an athlete from 4 years of age and your military education in a military school help you to get through the PhD?
Oh, okay. Through my journey, of course, yeah. I think as an endurance athlete, you have this idea of keep going, not giving up. You will be tired, all these limitations. You're thirsty, you're hungry, there is too much sun. But I think that all helped at some point, and that's why that's the beauty of life. I think that you don't know when everything you know or everything you have practiced comes in handy. Yeah.
Good to hear. And the other thing I was wondering is, how did you recruit your participants? I might have missed that bit, but was it difficult? Was it challenging to find people to participate in the research? And did you give them much preparation about what it was you were investigating?
Yeah, it was challenging, particularly because I wanted the same students to go through the same research methods. So the survey, the research on site, and then the interviews. So because of that, together with my supervisor, we embed the research project into a course, a design studio, which is still running at uni. And I think that's quite interesting. It became something that the students are super happy to do that, because we give them the freedom to go to site and get familiar with what they see, which, you know, they cross over the same pathways every day, but they are not really aware of what is around them. So that, I think that's the beauty of this studio. And yeah, so that's how I managed to make and then engage them as well. So we have different sessions for testing the tools, the instruments. It was done with a mobile application, ethnographic mobile application. So we went outside to, first of all, to learn to use the appliance, and then to learn to read our spaces around us. What else did we do? Well, the survey was quite easy. You know, it was just through SurveyMonkey, so they just got it in their emails. And and also, okay, in the interviews afterwards, it was conducted through small groups. So that was also an interesting exercise for them, because you know, through conversations they were generating ideas, they were remembering things. Oh yes, that happened to me as well. So that's when all this that my Michaela, the question of Michaela, that's when they started to agree on some things or disagree in others, and that's I guess the beauty of qualitative research, and that generates these contradictions in the way we think and feel in the space. Yeah.
Did you notice any, or did you look for differences between the genders or the age groups of the students? Oh, you were doing a particular group of students, so they were probably about the same age. But yeah, did you have a look at the data? You know, cut the data different ways?
That's a very important question, and that was my intention originally, to divide, because I have a homogeneous sample of half-half. It was 20 female, 20 male, but unfortunately I couldn't do it. and also the sample I had, it was you know, limiting for me. But my methodology, which is going to be published very soon, it considers this and gives the possibility to do so, to maybe conduct, that would be great, to conduct different sort of studies only with females, with different sort of groups, demographic groups, and see the differences. Even the fact that this research was conducted with students from design could also be another variable to consider for future research.
Yeah.
Because, you know, designers are more trained to see the space and understand. But I think up to now, this fear of crime research, I haven't really found this variable as something common, you know. So I think it's quite important to start conducting the same. I conducted a pilot project with students from psychology back in South America, and it was a different experience as well. The students don't, you know, they don't know how to read the space. So potentially will be interested to train. Maybe that's closer to a reality, because if we conduct this audit, the environmental auditings with a normal population who are not really familiar with maybe research methods or how to read the space, that would be interesting, you know, maybe to conduct. I don't know. I'm just excited about it. Yeah. So many possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Nataly, I was wondering, I know you haven't really spoken about the framework that you have made as part of this PhD, and hopefully you might come back in a month or two and present that. That'd be great. With that, so I understand you've made another framework that can sit alongside of CPTED or work together with CPTED. I was just wondering what you hope the future of that framework will be. Does it need to be tested or?
Yes. What the framework does is kind of starts everything from the beginning. It clarifies what is the role of our individual or psychology as individuals. What is the role of environment? What it contains the environment with these elements I have found. So, and it provides this environmental organization, as I mentioned, is an framework that organizes how to classify our environmental components. Yeah, so whatever we found, we have this organization framework, and then we can say, okay, so if we find maybe in some, like from architecture, it will be found next time, maybe the building facades. Okay, no, that's well. Maybe the environmental, the urban furniture, for instance, right? So then from urban furniture, with the specific quality of this is it's affecting the fear of this population in this specific place. So it would be maybe, again, deterioration, for instance. So then we have a specific group of people and very clear what to address or what to analyze, what to improve. And then I think it's a matter of testing in different settings. Public settings, in my research, I consider unexplored sites like cemeteries, for instance. Cemeteries, I think, is an interesting space that needs more research, that has possibility. We saw through pandemic times, it was becoming a popular place of visits, but it could still generate some strange perceptions, and I guess fear of crime could be one of them. Yeah. Sorry, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
No. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, Nataly. That was great. So are there any more questions? I might close the session. I have been struggling a little bit with my internet. I hope it didn't affect anyone. I was trying to move it from my house internet to hotspot, but I just couldn't get it done in the background here. So thanks, everyone. I believe next time Michaela and Shari are going to present a healthcare related, or actually two pieces. You're going to share a session, and it's I've forgotten the titles, but it was from a conference in Europe, was it?
London.
London. It was actually London. Yeah, I was there, but online, not physically. So we look forward to that next session, and we'll see you all then. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.